And thank you for registering for tonight's Network Prospect Business Event, Influencer Marketing with Digitale. Got that correctly. Stepped over that before. My name's Daniel Adams. I'm the Manager of Business and Innovation here at City of Prospect. I also just wanted to give a shout out to the rest of the team. We've got Emma, who's working the tech, and Nat at the back, who's been working on the bar. So thank you all for coming along. We're thrilled to be hosting another one of our events in person. We've been doing these just through the webinar, so I'm going to try and keep the mic close to my mouth because otherwise no one will be able to hear me. So as the restrictions are starting to come off more and more, we're going to probably look to do a bit more in-person stuff. I've been working on webinar, but we're going to still keep the webinars going for those who prefer that way of learning. For our in-person guests, the bathrooms are at the back. If there is a fire or anything like that, down the stairs and out the front door as quick as we can, probably, but we'll all be as safe as we can in that process, but we'll be fine. We'll be releasing information about our future events as they come out. At the moment, we've got a full schedule going forward, but we're just waiting a little bit just to confirm a few things. So follow us on social media, Network Prospect, on all the platforms, and you'll be able to find out more information about that, or go to our website and you can sign up for our newsletter on there as well. If you're posting during tonight's event, either in person or at home, hashtag Network Prospect, and we will reshare any of your stories tomorrow or tonight if we get to it as well. So please feel free to do that. Emma will be monitoring the chat for everyone who's on the webinar. So any questions, you can put them in the Q&A and we'll get back to those at the end. If you are on the webinar, please use the chat function to talk amongst yourselves, maybe introduce yourself and do some virtual networking. For everyone in here, you can do some networking afterwards. And then at the end, if you have any questions, we'll bring them back as well. So tonight we'll be talking about influencer marketing with Natalie Paraskevopoulos from Digitale. From the days of from MySpace, Natalie has kept an eye on social media trends and their ability to influence behaviors. When she found herself working in real estate several years back, she harnessed these skills to implement a content marketing and social media strategy, which recognized her as one of LA's most influential agents on social media. 2 years running. This flowed into her spearheading some large influencer marketing campaigns. So she's an expert in this field. Digitale is a social media and creative agency fueled by storytelling that helps connect people. Their agency focuses on social media and their content strategy as their main driving force. And with that, I'd love to welcome Natalie, and she's going to have to get hooked up to the mic. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. This is definitely a topic that I'm very passionate about. I've really had the luxury of working in this space since it wasn't even really a thing. So been lucky to see it evolve into really what it is today. Just so I can kind of get an idea as to who we've got in the room, who has worked with influence before. Can I have a show of hands? Okay, we've got lots of people who are new to this. That's fun. So I'll talk extra slow because I talk really fast. I often get asked how I actually came to work in influencer marketing, because it's, again, one of those things that not a lot of people understand. People used to say, what do you do for work? And I'd say, I work in influencer marketing. Oh, so you sit on Instagram all day? Yes and no. The fitness industry in particular, thank you for joining us. The fitness industry in particular really drove this. So whilst I was working at Sweat, we definitely saw the opportunity to utilize influencers in a much broader sense for a number of different industries come to light. But enough about me. Let's get into the good stuff. Just want to really talk about the numbers and I guess why we're kind of in a position to, be in a room talk about influence marketing right now. So here we are. So as of 2021, it's a $15 billion industry. That's a lot of money. Kim Kardashian was listed as a billionaire today too, if anyone wanted to know. And we have 63% of marketers set to increase their influencer marketing budget in 2021. So I'm hoping that some of you kind of fall into that 63%. Let's kind of, again, because this is new to most of you, let's kind of go back a little bit as to where this whole concept really came from. Pre-Instagram, an influencer would have traditionally been a celebrity, used as the face of the brand for traditional, from print to TV to billboards. Her face is nice to look at, so we'll use Eva Longoria as an example. L'Oreal, she was a partner for over 15 years across TV, print, digital. With the shift in digital landscape, we've seen these types of partnerships really evolve and transform to really nurture and feed into the social space. With the success of beauty influencers in particular, L'Oreal really took this opportunity by the horns last year. They actually had Eva film a commercial on her own iPhone, dyeing her hair with their, I believe it's $11 hair dye. This campaign actually won awards. So it's a really clever way to integrate her as the face of the brand and then take it back to compete with beauty influencers. How many of us actually saw that on TV last year? Influencer marketing. It's a good one. She had a lot of grace. She's a real person. Continuing on with that success globally, L'Oreal then also ran a digitally driven campaign for International Women's Day, where they actually utilize more mid-tier influencers. I will go through the different tiers of influencers as well with you shortly. Like Poe from MasterChef. Do we all recognize Poe? They also use Jessica Mauboy for another contrast, which is not really quite what we're going for. This really highlights the connection between reality TV and social media. A vast majority of the dominant influencers, particularly in Australia and also in the UK and US, have actually originated from reality TV shows. Think The Bachelor, Big Brother, MasterChef, Love Island, House Rules, The Block, the list goes on. And they range from micro to macro, depending on their commitment to actually being an influencer. It is a choice. We've got Martha. Everyone knows Martha from maths, a little bit controversial. We've got Sophie. She was from The Bachelor. We've got Sky from Big Brother. Now, she was one of the, God, that would have been Big Brother like 5-6 years ago. So she's been doing this for a while. Then we've got our own lovely Jess Dover from Adelaide. So she was on House Rules. Let's talk about the different levels of an influencer, because I think this is really where people go, but what actually constitutes an influencer? Mega, the Kim Kardashians of the world, 213 million followers. Her current rate ranges anywhere from 300,000 to $1 million US per post, depending on the collaboration. If it's something that's quite organic and easy to use, you'll probably be sitting at the lower end. But now she's a billionaire. This could have changed, so don't take my word on it. Macro, Sky Wheatley. We're looking at 500 to 1 million followers. 654,000 she's currently sitting at. Last time I got her rate, she was 3,500 per post. Jade, she actually won Influencer of the Year through E 2019. They didn't do it last year because COVID. 478,000 followers. Last time I got her rates, $17.50 per post. Then we have a micro, 10 to 50,000. This is Minay. She is a lovely girl from the Gold Coast. I've used her on a few campaigns. She's sitting at 20,000 at the moment, 350 per post. Again, last time I spoke to her. Then we've got Letitia. She is a stylist in Queensland. She works for Westfield. She has 5,000 followers and her rates range really, last time I checked, depend on the brand. It could be 150 a post to 250 a post, but she's also willing to take product for posts. Naturally, budget is always the biggest factor here. As we can see, you're ranging from nothing to $1 million US. It all comes back down to knowing your target audience. I can't stress that enough. I'll go back to that one. Who you choose to use and the budget that you have set is all going to come down to who you're actually trying to connect to. If your target audience is mums in Perth who have dogs, you probably don't need to spend $1 million on Kim Kardashian, right? However, you'd probably get more bang for your buck with someone like Letitia, who has a following in Perth, and she's not going to cost you as much. As a business owner or marketer, I do want to ask the question, what is your main goal when using an influencer? Has anyone run a campaign, and what was your goal? Awareness. Okay, and how do you measure awareness?
Probably reach and engagement.
Yeah, cool. Good one. Most people will say sales. Anytime a brand's ever come to me and said, I want to do an influencer campaign, and I've said, how will you deem if this campaign is successful? They say sales. That makes sense. And I'm not saying I disagree with that. You absolutely need something measurable when it comes to determining the success of your campaign. But your goals and objectives can be a little bit more diverse. Any influencer campaign I've ever worked on, I've always made it clear that we have a why. Why are we executing this? Is it to generate user-generated content? Is it to increase overall brand awareness? Do we want to increase our presence in a particular market? Do we want to drive website clicks? Do we want more email subscribers? The list does go on. Your why should work in line with your overall marketing strategy to connect the dots. Nothing works in isolation. That's marketing 101. So influencer marketing is no different. It's at this point when we look at how it all works with the moving parts that we can actually place a value on the outcome. Without knowing what the objective is, how can you put a value on that? For example, relatively new brand launching that doesn't have any content for social media. We're starting from scratch. Content may be the most vital thing for them. So that's what we need from influencers. Bearing that in mind, we may be prepared to spend a little bit more on influencers because we're not having to pay for a shoot. The content is more versatile across a variety of mediums. We're going to use that content for website, email, social, PR. And C, the influencer will also be posting on their channels, which enhances authenticity when we do utilize it. Consumers will start to connect the dots. When you do start to think about what you hope to achieve from an influencer campaign, we generally start to see the difference between an ambassador and an influencer. This is something that I personally see a very blurred line here in Adelaide. Everyone's very quick to jump on as an ambassador for something, but do we really understand what the difference is? I'm going to use an example. The simplest way I like to look at the difference here. Influencer, an individual with a large social media community, large being 0 to 1 million. We're looking at audience, but they're also skewed at content creation. Content is the collateral at this point. An ambassador is an individual with a media presence, a recognizable face within the local or national community. Which way you choose to go will always come back to your goals and objectives. I want to use an example here. So EOS by Sky City, the big golden building on the riverbank. We chose to work with Beck Morse for this campaign. Now, the reason for this, influencer marketing was a critical element of the launch campaign for EOS. We had to create brand awareness during a time where we were in and out of lockdown. Hotels probably weren't the most ideal thing to be marketing at that point in time, but radio, particularly locally, was a big part of the strategy. So we looked to integrate the marketing mix by utilizing Beck as an ambassador. This is how we connected the dots between what people were hearing on the radio and what they were then seeing on social. By aligning the messaging of the live reads and the pre-recorded ads with our social media strategy, we're able to successfully utilize Beck as a familiar, but most importantly, trustworthy face for the brand. We had her feature in a content shoot, which we utilized across EOS Social, but we also provided all of this content to her for her to use on her platform. This helped her meet her post quota. One of the biggest challenges we have is I don't have content. She had no excuses. We gave her everything. And she met her post quota. She was lovely to work with. It was the combination of user generated. She took that one, obviously. She took that one. We took the rest. That consumers, people who follow her, like her, know her, trust her, saw this combination and went, wow, Beck actually goes to this place. She likes it. She stays there by choice. I'm going to give it a go. So we talked about campaign. How do you actually build a campaign? This is probably one of the biggest missing links I see when it comes to influencer marketing. Brands will say, I just want to work with influencers. Okay, In what capacity? What are you trying to achieve? We go back to the goals and objectives. I just want them to post my product. There's so much more to it. Developing a campaign, I like to see it as it's your strategy. It's the plan that helps you to achieve those bigger goals. And again, this is where many businesses, they actually miss an opportunity to maximize, if they're spending, but also making the most of the partnership. The concept for your campaign will also align with your why and drive the goals and objectives you would have determined previously if you followed the steps. As at last year, 67% of marketers will work with influencers on a campaign basis rather than an always on approach. Always on approach, I would liken to my previous role at Riderwear. We had an influencer program. Essentially, we had, in 2018, we had 700 athletes all over the world. That's an always on. They've got post deliverables on a monthly basis. They have to meet their posts. So we knew we were getting 700 pieces of user generated content every single month. That's not always scalable. That's not always achievable for businesses, but having a really clear campaign is going to get you results. Developing a campaign will help you get really clear on exactly what you want to see from them. We like to do this before we even talk. We don't even know who we're talking to yet, but we need to get clear on what we want. What you want to see from them, the key messaging, the number of posts and stories, and of course the time frame. Are they posting over a period of time? Is it a one week and then 2 weeks later? One-off posts from influencers will not drive any results. Like I can't stress that enough. Another reason why the campaign approach is more effective is because it takes into consideration the importance of stories and multiple posts over a period of time to build trust. Demonstrates authenticity, and that's what will drive your brand awareness. Marketing traditionally, I'm sure everyone's probably heard this line before, it takes 7 touch points with a brand for it actually to stick. Influencer marketing is no different. You're not going to see a post once off and go, wow, I'm going to buy that pair of shoes. It's a process. Stories, hence why stories should be just as important with your influencer obligations. Reason being, polls in stories, Q&A sessions. There are a number of ways to engage with influencers beyond just a comment or a like. Instagram stories will also make it very useful for you to track swipe up links. Naturally, only if you're working with an influencer with 10,000 plus followers, but you can share direct calls to action. You can share trackable links if you're working with an e-commerce brand. I'm not sure if anyone here has ever worked with UTM links before. Nods, yep. That's essentially where you can track where this traffic has come from. So you can get a very clear attribution as to whether an influencer has actually driven traffic or not. The fact is that in 2020, 73% of Australians purchased from an influencer. Has anyone, I'm going to ask a question, has anyone seen something from an influencer and that has actually helped them make the purchasing decision? Got a couple of nods. I'm guilty. I've definitely done it. My postman agrees. So what does a campaign actually look like? Use example for Solo the Staple. So this was an activewear brand that we launched Valentine's Day last year. Really unique product, being onesies for Pilates. To launch a new activewear brand in particularly, I guess what you would call quite a flooded market, activewear, we've got a lot to choose from these days, but we also had a unique product. So we made sure that we had a really clear campaign. We ensured we had clear messaging strategy behind utilizing influencers for launch. Now, based on the fact that we were launching on Valentine's Day, this contributed to that key messaging. The influencers we engaged were briefed to post a series of stories and feed posts pre-launch. So we started pre-launch 2 weeks before the 14th. The messaging being all around self-love, showing yourself love on Valentine's Day. What do you do to make yourself feel good, which aligns with the overall brand values and brand goals, being exercise because it makes you feel good, do it for you, wear something that makes you feel amazing. the mental and physical benefits as well. And then of course, launch posts and stories being quite product centric, but also aligning back to we exercise because we enjoy it and it makes us feel good about ourselves. And it's also our time. It's for us. We're doing it solo. Get it? We worked with nano influencers all the way up to mega influencers. So we worked with Elle Ferguson, and we also worked with Jade, who you saw in the previous slide as well. So we did have good substantial budget on this campaign, but that's not to say that we didn't utilize influencers from every tier. And that's what made it successful. This not only saw the profile grow from under 1,000 followers to 3,500 in 30 days, but we also saw a huge increase in website clicks, which allowed us to nurture those website visitors through Facebook ads. So the question is then, how do you find influencers? We know what to do with them now, but where do we find them? Has anyone had any experience sourcing influencers before? Can I ask, how did you find them?
Instagram. I knew I was kind of briefed on what kind of people we were looking for.
Yep.
And I've got a pretty good sense of from my own Instagramming of who to kind of look at.
Yep.
So I kind of looked at them and then other people that kind of associate themselves with.
And you went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a rabbit hole. It takes time, I will fair warn, but there is a process. One thing that I will always say, now you have budget, clarity on your goals and objectives, it's about finding the right people. When I say budget, it's not always monetary. It could actually be a stock allocation. It could also be a contra allocation. So when I say contra, let's say you're a restaurant, you've got an allocation of 20 free meals that you're happy to forgo every single month. This will dictate how many people you actually reach out to, because if you've got an allocation of, let's say 20 a month, I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, but essentially we'd like to say you have a roughly 30% response rate. You'll have to factor that in when you're doing your outreach and building out your list. The process for finding influencers will look really different, and I know that's a lot. It will look different depending on your industry, depending on the nature of your business, but essentially this is a really good starting place. It's a really good way just to get consistent and get the right behaviors. Most important thing, we always source influencers on desktop. Does anyone know why? Yes, you can. Well done. So if anyone didn't hear that, you can see likes on desktop. The other reason that I always say, also there's a Digitale, if you're not following us, follow us. The other reason I always say we do it on desktop is because you can actually save your tabs. When you're doing it on your phone and you're going down that rabbit hole, you lose track really, really quick. And I don't know about you, but my camera roll is full of screenshots and I don't need any more. So this is a lot easier for me. I'll have my spreadsheet open in the next tab and we can get searching. So the best way to get started here is by thinking of other brands in the same geographic area that have a similar target audience, not necessarily the same product. For example, I'm just going to use a e-commerce brand, for example. You are targeting women aged, let's say 25 to 45, sweet spot, maybe the mums between 30 to 40. You ship nationally. What's a brand that that's done a really good influencer campaign? Straight off the top of my head, I follow them, so I know. I'm going to say Bang & Body. Has anyone followed Bang & Body? No? Great influencer marketing. So these guys went from essentially being in someone's garage to 2 years later being available at Mecca, 264,000 followers, their shop, they're available all over the globe, really good product. I was influenced. What you can then do, have a look at their tagged photos. Let's have a look at the kind of stuff they're getting tagged in. That looks half decent. Start to get an idea of what types of photos do you think you would use on your page if this obviously is your target market. What we can then do is start to shortlist a few profiles. You know, let's have a look at this here. You know, Brooke Ritchie, we'll save her. I'll just put this down because it's easy. I do actually really like her. Open new tab. And you can start to open all these new tabs and you just go down the rabbit hole. Essentially, I'm not going to waste your time with watching me go down the rabbit hole because I take hours. What you can then do is build that list out. But I understand if you're local, it's going to be very different. So let's use, I'm going to use a cafe in Prospect as an example. Best way to go is geotags. Fun fact, posts that have a geolocation will get higher engagement than posts that don't. So if we want to go into location, Prospect, South Australia, let's have a look at who's tagging themselves in photos in Prospect. Got 416 likes. Jackie's food fetish. There you go. Imagine if I open someone's post and you're like, that's my friend. Her engagement is really good though. So you can start to see what kind of things have we got. Are they all businesses? Are they people? What have we got here? If anyone actually lives in Prospect, they're probably going to see themselves as well. And as we can see, as I hover over, you can see your likes. So Instagram thought they did the sneaky on us, but they didn't. They didn't think that through. So, example. Then what you can also do, again, I'm going to say that you are a hospitality venue. Let's think of a hospitality venue that lots of people want to go to, that's got quite a good presence. I'm going to use Show Show as an example because it is really yummy. What you can then do, have a look at their tagged photos. Who's taking cool content at Show Show? Have a look at their profiles. Is that the kind of content that you would want to use? Is their audience aligned with yours? Always check their location. So I know Helena. Let's go on to Helena's profile. Although she was in Adelaide, she is based in Sydney. So if you are only local, always make sure you double check. If you are on someone's profile and they don't have their location in their bio, the best way to do it is just to go through some of their posts and hope and pray that they at least have a location. There you go, iceberg, so we know she's in Sydney. Does anyone have any questions around that kind of process? Because it's messy, but it is a lot of trial and error. Nope, okay. Like I said, from this process, you are building out a big list. Don't even think about it. Just every profile that you see that goes, yeah, cool, I like the look of that. That kind of fits my brand, my goals, my objectives. You're doing a list. This is just a dump of all the profiles you've come across that meet the requirements of around following and location. So again, if you know that you do not have budget financially, you're obviously only looking at people from 0 to 10,000. So always make sure you're not putting anyone else on the list that doesn't have that. If you have flexibility with budget and perhaps you're interested in collecting some rates and seeing what people are going to come back with, spread that band a little bit higher, maybe go to 20, 30,000. Don't worry about vetting at this stage in terms of checking engagement rates and going down the deep dive in their profile. Let's just get a list of as many as possible. This can take some time. Fair warning, you could be doing this for over a week. I'm not going to lie. The reason for that is you need to give yourself the space to look at things with a fresh set of eyes. Anyone who's been down the rabbit hole will know that everyone starts to look the same after a while. You go, have I seen this person before, or do they just look the same as the last 10 profiles that I've been on? It's part of it. Take some time, step back. Once you've got your big list, then we can start to look at vetting it. The reality is that vetting is subjective. I'll be honest. This is why it's so important to know what your goals, what your objectives, what you're hoping to achieve, because if you don't know, what are you vetting for then? This will essentially form your filter, so to speak. It will come down to personal taste. Like I said, if you're on someone's profile and you go, oh, I like that style of photo, You could show it to someone else and they'll go, well, I hate that style of photo. Don't overwhelm yourself. If you like it, put it on the list. Keep it simple. The next thing is obviously checking that their audience is authentic and their audience is engaged. This is called an engagement rate. So this is a bit of math. This is the most math you'll ever get from me. Engagement rate equals average number of likes plus comments divided by total following times 100 will get you a percentage. I will give you an example here. Again, I'm really good at maths. So let's look at Helena here. So she has get my trusty calculator. So 367 plus 13, that's 380 divided by 17,600 times by 100, 2.15%. Industry average, 2%. Generally, you don't want to see an engagement rate less than 2%. Naturally, the bigger the following, the more likely their engagement will be less. But we're starting to see these nano influencers with 3,000-4,000 followers with 5-6% engagement rate. I would choose them any day of the week over someone who it could have 30,000, they're going to charge me $1,500. Not to say I don't value them, but I see far more value in an audience as engaged as that. This again is knowing where your goals and objectives are. It's going to dictate everything. Are we looking for content creators whose content we will repurpose? Is it reach and engagement? Is that more important to you? Do you have a good bank of content and you're happy with all of that and you just want to make sure that everyone sees your brand everywhere? That's going to choose, it's going to impact who you choose. Let's skip this bit. Let's talk about the hospitality industry. I think this is a really interesting one because it's not the same as e-commerce, which is your general cookie cutter. Is anyone here in hospitality? No. Oh, I thought we'd have some hospo. That's okay. Let's talk about it anyway. The difference with hospitality is that having people taking pretty photos doesn't actually get results, unfortunately. I'm not sure if anyone remembers, would have been 3-4 years ago now, there was a big issue with a food editor from the Australian. He basically ripped a local influencer to shreds. Said that she was asking for, was it, what was the name of the article? It was chow for, it was very cheeky. Yeah, it was. Look, she asked for free food. She approached it in the wrong way. And I actually spoke to her afterwards and kind of helped her on her approach moving forwards to avoid this happening again. But she went to this restaurant and said, hey, I would like a free meal and I'm going to do a review for you. Review is not the right word. What she should have said was, hey, I like your restaurant. I think that my audience actually would be of value to you and I think that they would respond well to me. I'd love to come in exchange for a meal and create some content for you. She wouldn't have had that issue otherwise. So this is where pretty photos alone in hospitality don't cut through. What I found from working with a variety of hospitality venues is they don't care about anyone else. Its reputation is beyond your social media feed. It's looking at different avenues like local papers and local publications and industry people. So this is where, again, from my experience, trust is the most important thing. What do we talk about with ambassadors? Trust is the biggest factor. So that's where working with people who already have a reputation in the hospitality industry from, let's say, reality TV, like a Poe, or someone in the media industry, again, Beck Morse is an example, it's going to have a different budget, but it could actually work much better with your overall marketing strategy as opposed to just going, I'm going to give 20 free meals to these people who have good audiences, but you have no way of knowing if they're actually contributing to your bigger brand picture. Does that all make sense? Because I know it's a difficult concept in the sense that services and kind of put hospitality and services in the same bucket to a degree, because it's not that tangible product and it's not as easy to fake. There is always going to be the issue with authenticity with influencer marketing. And again, that's where making sure that you are working with the right people, you're going through the right process to make sure that you are mitigating any risks possible. I did talk about earlier stock allocations and response rates. So I've just made a note here, 30% response rate is standard. So let's say you've got 20 units of stock to allocate. You'll need around 62 influencers on your list, on your short list, to account for that. As you start to get responses, you can gauge if you need to source more. But again, that's just a rough rule of thumb. We'll get into communication because that's a long one. Has anyone here communicated or tried to start a conversation with influencers before? It can be challenging. You kind of don't know where to start sometimes, and you think you're doing the right thing, sending them an email. 3 weeks later, you don't get a reply. You send them a DM, they see it, and then you just never get a reply. Or you get what happened to us today. They saw it, they liked it, they haven't replied. I don't quite understand that, but it's the nature of the beast, and that's why you have these longer lists, so you can make sure you're ticking all of your boxes. Communication in general, I like to say, should follow a pretty standard checklist approach. Always start with an introduction. We always go for email over DM first. If there's an email, roll with that, bearing in mind they might not reply. Go with that, who you are, what you do, why you think you can work together. Make it really personal. Start a conversation. If you went on their feed and saw that they were in Byron Bay last week, make a comment. Oh, saw you went here. What did you think? I've been there before. Really make your email stand out from a crowd. You've got to remember with a lot of these people, and this is where you got to cut some slack, they're probably getting like 30 emails a day. That's a lot. I get anxiety from 10. So you've got to make sure that you're actually speaking their language and you're actually getting them where they want to learn more. They want to talk to you. Make it conversational, always. I always say if no reply in 7 days, then send them a DM, a condensed version. Just starting the conversation, always trying to get it onto email. I will always say, what's your best email? Even though they've got it in their bio, but clearly they're not replying to that. So I just want to make sure I have got the right email. Then they've replied to you, assuming everything's hunky-dory. Then we want to provide some more details and that brief that we would have put together. Thanks for coming back to me. Because you have your well-prepared brief, you can share with them that this is what you're hoping to achieve. That will include your ideal time frame, what you're providing them with, what you expect from them. Is it 2 posts? Is it a story? Example content? Is it video? If there's any specific hashtags they need to use, if there's any tags they need to use, everything humanly possible. At this stage, you can also ask for their demographics. Now, this is something that I get asked a lot. Can you ask someone for their insights? Absolutely. It's a simple question. And this is where if you've kind of worked on building that relationship with them to get to the point where you say, great, cool, we're aligned, we want to work together. Would you mind sending me a screenshot of your insights? That's then going to show you where their audience is based, age, gender, just making sure that it is in fact aligned. This used to be quite taboo, asking for demographics probably 6-7 years ago. And I remember working at Riderwear, and one of the influencers we worked with, she created incredible content. Still use it to this day. I see it everywhere. But I said, my first day, I said, something's not right. She's not converting. She's not driving the traffic through her UTM. Something's not right. Has anyone ever asked her for her demographics? Oh, no, well, we didn't know we could do that. Okay, came back. 98% male for a female. What does that tell you? Why are they following her? She's pretty and she's got a good bum. So, you know, this is where you're allowed to ask these questions. It's not embarrassing. You're running a business at the end of the day, and you want to know that you're actually connecting with the audience that you think you are. Then we're all hoping that we're all friends by this point. They're going to come back to you and say, sure, I'd love to. Depending on the level, they're either going to reply and say, cool, sounds great. Here's my postal details. Let's get the ball rolling. Or they're going to say, do you have a budget? This is my favorite question. They'll come back to you and say, do you have a budget for this collaboration? To which I will always respond and say, as I mentioned, these are the deliverables that we're thinking. What would your rate for the above be? Get them to talk about the money stuff first, because it's, you know, get them to come back to you. Then you can look at it and go, okay, did that meet my expectations? Was it a little bit off? What am I kind of thinking? Most influencers will have a bit of a media kit that will actually itemize, you know, their cost per post. They might have a 2 post minimum so that you have to do 2. They might have packages with stories and posts. Work it out, make sure it all adds up, make sure you're comfortable with that. Again, you have a very clear budget at this point. So if you're not happy with it, you're not happy with it. You just need to make the calls what you feel they're worth. And this is tricky because, again, if you haven't spent the time understanding what you actually place value on, they could come back to you and say, I'm, you know, $3,000 a post. And you go, well, I don't know if that's a lot or not. And that's the biggest question I always get people say. So-and-so's come back to me, their rate is X per post. Is that a lot? Is it a lot to you? Really get clear on what you think something is worth. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. What Jade is worth at $3,500 per post to solo is not going to be the same to what she's worth for the daily edited, just an example. You've got to really understand what you're trying to achieve. Does anyone have any questions around communication? Because I know this is like, it's not textbook, but it's just about kind of easing into it. Any questions?
If you aren't speaking from the brand itself,
Mhm.
if you are representing a brand or, you know, assisting a brand, would you recommend only communicating with influencers from the brand that you want them to represent?
Do it both ways. Good question. Do it both ways. So for us, when we are contacting influencers on behalf of our clients, we will always reach out and say, hi, just wanted to get in touch on behalf of our client X, intro who they are. If we're DMing, we'll always go through the brand account. And that's because you got more chance of them opening it. Let's be honest, they're not going to see Digitale pop up and go, ooh, I'm going to open that. I'm realistic. But with emails, absolutely. And the great thing is too, if you're coming from an agency background, you have the luxury of relationships. You know, we talk to, gosh, anywhere from 500 to 600 influencers a week. So when they see our email come through, they go, oh, cool, I know these guys. What have they got for me today? What are they thinking? You can have a little bit more flexibility. And I guess that's the benefits of working with an agency, but there's also many, many advantages from being direct from a brand as well. The fun stuff, money. I wish, and I've said this for many years now, I wish that there was like just regulations. This is what you charge. If you've got X amount of followers, this is what you charge. There's no gray area. It's not like that. There is so many discrepancies, and it blows my mind sometimes to see the rates that we get sent through and you go, this person's got less engagement, less followers, but they're charging more than another person. And again, do you think they're worth it? It's subjective. So you've really, again, just got to remember what you're trying to achieve. Has the money bit ever actually stopped anyone from proceeding with a collaboration? They've kind of just gone, I don't know if this is a good price. Or the reason I ask that again is because a lot of people will go, well, they've told me what they want. This is their rate. And again, I don't know if it's good or not. I don't know if I'm being led up the garden path because there's no regulation. There's no structure. There is no calculation. I can't tell you the amount of hours. Many years ago, Toby Pierce and I, we spent probably 3 months trying to work out a calculation for CPM, cost per milli, to try and understand how we could actually get some standards in terms of pricing. It wasn't possible. There just was no physical way that you can put a price on this, please.
Has any of the influencers ever said that, oh, this is my price and I guarantee you that you will get this many leads for hiring me?
Never.
They
It's,
never claim.
you can't, you physically can't. And if anyone were ever to say that to me, I'd say, you're nuts, because the reality is you can't guarantee anything. You don't know how your audience is going to respond.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, that they would give you a higher rate as compared to somebody else, and you know, do they ever bother to tell you an excuse or a reason for the thing that
Oh,
you know?
not really. Again, they'll just say that that's the price that they put on it based on a number of factors. The thing to remember with rates is that content has a price. So for a lot of influencers, they actually work full time. They have full-time jobs. So for them to make the time to shoot for a particular brand, they might have to take a day off work. That's going to cost them money. Then they've got to pay for a photographer. They might have to get their hair and makeup done. There's all these other elements that will contribute to their price.
So, but there is a mix of influencers who would make a post for you, or you would give them some material that, okay, put this on your profile for me.
Would never ask someone to do that. The reason for that, it's not authentic. Authenticity is key. So you always want to provide an influencer with something to create the content themselves. It needs to come from them. If you're just providing them with an asset, let's say, or an image, it's not genuine to them. And particularly with influencers who have a very curated feed as well, their feed is, we spend a lot of time doing these things. That might not align. So you just run the risk. Depending on what product or service, again, that's going to dictate what level you'll get away with contra or gifting. It's amazing how their reactions change depending on what the actual offering is. We offered skincare, I want to say 4 weeks ago, to one person with 30,000 followers, and they said, these are my rates. We offered them clothes yesterday and they said, sure, I'll do it for free. You just don't know. It depends what they want and what's workable with them. And this is where they're very clear on what their limitations are, because they go, well, that's worth something to me because now I don't have to buy clothes. I didn't really need skincare, so that's my rate, take it or leave it. Generally speaking though, in terms of contra, we will always draw the line at 10K. It can be a little bit unrealistic to expect someone to post and create content for you for free at that next level. But it never hurts to ask. Again, if you have a relationship with someone, ask, what do they say? If you don't ask, you don't get. So you've got to give it a go.
Just on that, how would you actually, in a professional way, how would you ask that if you're comfortable? Like, I completely understand. I've got friends who do influencing and see the work that goes into it. It's not like, I mean, when you put it into perspective, it's not that easy. But like, what's a way of asking that? Are you comfortable with us just sending you this? Like, if it was for a business who is more than happy to pay the person for it, but you don't have to pay.
Correct.
3K. What's a professional way to actually ask them that?
We approach it in a few different ways. So again, relationships, we often will start the conversation and say, hey, we'd love to share this product with you. It's new. We really want to get your feedback. Start it that way, that we actually want to hear what they've got to say. Are you comfortable with us sending this out to you? This process does take longer, I will warn you. Then once they've got the product, say, hey, what did you think? Did you have any thoughts or feedback? Oh yeah, cool, I loved it. Most of the time they say they loved it. Cool, you loved it. Do you mind if you happen to take any photos, or do you take, if they post a story too, I would say just save the story. Would you mind sharing those with us? We'd love to post it on the brand's channel. Most of the time they're going to turn around and say, sure, here's some photos. Even if they don't post it on theirs, I want the photos for us to use on ours. Again, going back to what you value. If it's someone you know personally, the conversation does change a little bit. You've got to say, hey, And again, I do have this because I'm lucky I've got some friends in good positions as well, and I'll, you know, slip them some products. It's just, I understand if you don't have the time, but if you happen to have a free day where you're shooting some content, would you mind maybe doing one for this? And then I will always say, look, I'll put you on the top of the list for anything else. And again, if you're in this industry, you can kind of sort of help each other out a little bit. But it's just open conversation. Never be afraid to ask. And you know what? They might say yes. You just don't know. Always remember, like I said, content has a price. So if content is your objective, just remember, what's that worth to you? Is it worth, you know, if someone comes back and says my rate's $150 a post, but then you see the quality of their images and you go, cool, that'd be a good EDM image. Well, you've just saved yourself a full photo shoot, which could have cost you $1,000. So just got to kind of weigh it up a little bit. In addition to that, this is something that, you know, when I first started in influencer marketing, and people would always say, oh, you know, these influencers, they don't work. They just get sent free stuff and they take photos. And what a life. Like, I want to do that. Cool, in theory, yes. But as I mentioned, they work full time. They're shooting this in their free time, or they're taking a day off work to actually shoot this content for you. They're paying for photographers. They're spending hours and hours engaging with people on their channels. You don't grow a following with your eyes closed. And this is something that I'll even say to my clients who we do social media management for. We spend time commenting, liking, replying to stories, starting conversations, making sure that people feel like there's a person behind the page. That takes time. So if you're one of these people who's working full time, you've got, let's say, 8 brand partnerships on the go, you've got to keep up your deliverables in that sense. And then you've also got to keep your audience of, let's say, 10,000 followers happy. That's a lot of work, and that comes with a price. The risk factor. Like anything, there are risks involved in influencer marketing. I'm not going to beat around the bush with that one. Being prepared and doing your due diligence. Was that not the best photo? Doing your due diligence will make all the difference. So I can't stress that enough. At first, when you're doing all of the prep works, it can seem exhausting and you go, oh my God, I'm doing all of this and I haven't even messaged anyone yet. This is how you avoid these types of things. Before I get into this though, I do want to ask, is there anything that's put you off actually approaching an influencer or executing an influencer campaign? Is there something that's holding anyone back? No. Maybe it's some Photoshop Vita gummies. Some of the most common issues that I see with influencer marketing: incorrect messaging, using the wrong wording, providing incorrect information, e.g. dates, nutritional information. This can also be avoided by a clear brief. The brief will have all of the specifics in there. Any information relevant to it will be in the brief. The other thing you can always do is request to approve a post before it goes live. You don't have this luxury if it is free. If you are paying, you can always ask to approve something before it goes live. Off-brand or offensive content. This is something that I've seen plenty of in my time. Unfortunately, this is another one that comes down to your vetting process. When you do go through that shortlist, take the time to dig deep, scroll. It's there for a reason. If there's anything that you look at and go, I don't know if I want my brand associated with that, red flag. It's the other thing to also think, are they likely to go rogue? You'll find when you start talking to someone, if they're a little bit erratic or they jump from one thing to another, or their emails don't, they're not really making a whole lot of sense. Use your street smarts. Maybe that's where you put a line through them. Always, if you're in a position to approve content, we like to word it like I mentioned before. We'd love to share your content. So if you'd like to run any ideas past us, feel free to send it through. That way you can quite comfortably say, oh, look, unfortunately, the brand wouldn't post that on their feed. If you do something like XYZ, then they would. You kind of miss that boat a little bit. For most influencers, particularly nano, their goal is to be shared by a brand. As soon as you say, we want to share your content, they will do whatever you ask. Negative responses from their community. Again, this is one that when you start looking at paid influencers, and again, I've seen it happen far too much, the comments. If you read the comments on a sponsored post, you don't even use this. Oh, I thought you were vegetarian. People know these people's lives inside out, and there's no room for error. I saw a post today, my girlfriend tagged me in it. Belle Lucia, she's a model. We used her. She was everywhere for about 2 years. She posted a sponsored post for a protein company. She took one sip and she looked like she was going to be sick. And then the next slide was her feeding it to her dog. If I paid for that and I know what her rates are, I'd be a little bit upset. So this is where you've got to think, do our brands align? Am I going to get the best outcome? Or is that actually going to be potentially damaging for my brand? Because I don't think feeding my protein to my dog's a good thing. Consumers are clued on now. It's the nature of the beast. Anyone can scroll through their Instagram feed and go sponsored, sponsored, not sponsored, sponsored. It's like roulette. Another reason why having a very clear campaign is going to make all the difference. It allows an influencer to use stories to build up the authenticity before. It's not like I use a one-off sponsored post it's like a slap in the face with a wet fish. Let's put it that way. Out of nowhere, this person's never talked about this brand before, and then all of a sudden they're posting, I love it, it's my favorite. No one's going to fall for that. So you need to think about it in the campaign perspective where you go, I'm going to drip feed this. I'm going to do a story here. I've just found this new brand. Story 2, I've given it a go. Look at this. Post, I've been using this for X amount of weeks. Followed up by another story. I've been using this, or it's just subtly there. Then another story 2 weeks later. As a consumer and someone who religiously follows someone, I'm more inclined to go, hey, maybe they actually do like that. And we go back to the marketing touch points. I've seen it more than once to believe it now. Poor ROI. Now, what is ROI if you don't actually know what you're measuring? Trick question with influencer marketing. That's why I find it interesting when people say to me, my biggest concern with influencer marketing is that I'm going to have a poor ROI. Everyone's ROI is different depending on what your objective is. In addition to that, people always seem to forget that even if, let's say, sales is your main goal here, you actually physically can't attribute every single sale to an influencer. It's physically impossible. Even when we had discount codes at Riderwear, and you'd use a discount code and we go, oh, so-and-so made 15 sales this month. That's not to say that other people didn't see their posts and then got served an ad. Let's say they went on, I like this one. They may have seen your Instagram page, then gone on the website, then they got served an ad. Then they saw an influencer post. They went back on the website. They had an abandoned cart. They then got served another ad. Then they converted, but they forgot to use that influencer's discount code. Still doesn't mean that it didn't come from that influencer, did it? But you can't measure that. So that being said, beyond the sales, what do you look to determine if your campaign is successful? Now, let me just touch on this one real quick. There's an Instagram page, write this down, it's funny, Celeb Spell Check. If anyone's seen it, it's hours of entertainment. Jules has photoshopped some lovely Vita gummies. She could have gone to Coles and bought them herself, but she actually probably got sent a ton, but she's decided to Photoshop them in there. And then now their whole family's in the new ad. It works because it's Jules Sebastian. But she turned the comments off of that, and you understand why. All right, lucky last, reporting. This is the hard one too, isn't it? Success is going to look different for everyone. I can't stress that enough. It's not the same. What I deem successful, you might not, and the person next to you will think of something completely different. Let's go back to your goals and objectives again. If you aren't already utilizing a scheduling tool for your social media, I really strongly recommend using Later. The reason for this, it actually gives you a breakdown of your insights on a day-by-day breakdown. So you can actually see the date that an influencer posted and what influence that had on any of your major metrics. So if your goal is profile views, by keeping track of your profile views, you can see whose post or story had a positive influence on your profile views. That also gives you a really clear indication, and I always reinforce this, gives you a clear indication of whose audience actually responded to your brand well. So let's say they've posted a story and people have actually tapped on your name in their story. That to me says there was an alignment there. That actually ticks some boxes. Website clicks. Following on from profile views, it also indicates how engaged people are with, how engaged their audience is to continue to click through. Pending you have effective Facebook ads, you can also analyze correlations between conversions and influencer posts. So you can have a look and go, okay, looking at my data holistically, Jade posted on this day, my profile views went up the following day, website clicks also match that as well. Then when we look at our sales data, we saw a direct correlation the next day. Now, were they all from a discount code or a UTM? Probably not, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at the data and say, well, it's quite clear the trends that are happening here. User-generated content, something that I go on and on and on about, but I can't stress enough from a brand perspective, it's worth its weight in gold. You should be measuring how much content is produced from every single influencer campaign. That's stories, that's feed posts. A recent study found that 79% of people say that user-generated content highly impacts their purchasing decisions, and that 90% of consumers say authenticity is the biggest factor when choosing what brands to purchase from. This is where it goes beyond the influencer campaign, beyond their post. What are you actually getting from this? You're getting content that you're now then going to post on your socials that's going to enhance your social media because you've now got social proof. So if you're a new brand or a new business, people go, oh, it's not just their curated photo shoot, real people actually buy this. And of course, we do want to look at sales. I'm not saying don't look at sales, but we need to look at the bigger picture. Rather than trying to attribute individually as influencer marketing drives brand awareness, making those lead points very difficult to identify. Now, because that was just so much, I thought I'd summarize my top 10 points that I wish someone told me 6 years ago. Know your goals and objectives. I'll go on about it till the cows come home. Clarify if it's an influencer or an ambassador. There is a big, big, big difference. Have a budget, either monetary or contra. Develop a campaign. Get clear on your deliverables and expectations. Source influencers on desktop. Use geographic limitations as a starting point, e.g. local or hyperlocal, national or hyperlocal. Take your time vetting your big list of influencers. Don't beat yourself up if you feel like it's taking you a week or 2 weeks. That's okay. To really find the right people, it's going to take time. I often get asked, are there programs that you can use to find influencers? There are, and I've used them and they suck. It's manual. The reality is it's manual. So be kind to yourself, take the time. Make communication personal and really start a conversation. Connect with them. They are people. They don't bite. Talk about deliverables before budget and report on the bigger brand effect. Profile views, website clicks, user-generated content. Ta-da. Do we have any questions? Over to you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
I'm involved with a brand that sells online courses.
Mhm.
We do launches semi-regularly, and the course is on sale for a week or 2 weeks maximum. So it's tricky to, we want to engage influencers, but it's tricky because they don't necessarily have a direct sales point. They can do brand awareness, but then, you know, then they have to basically have that buy now call to action in a really specific time frame.
Yeah.
Is there a better way, or what's the best way to work in that kind of environment?
You hit the nail on the head there with the brand awareness. I think the opportunity there would be actually maybe potentially driving subscribers more so. So actually having it as an always on but campaign. So let's say it's a 90-day period before the course goes on sale that is, oh, hey, have you heard of this? Or I've been looking at this lately. Their courses are coming up soon. If you don't want to miss out, subscribe, or just get people to the profile, make it more of an awareness that can be measured, but don't have that hard sell. I think the hard sell is going to be people will see straight through that.
So use it more as a lead generation.
Yeah. What else? I'm not going anywhere, so. Have you got any questions on? Oh, no one wants to talk to me. Any other questions? Sure.
So a lot of influencer marketing is obviously more lines of product. I was just interested with services and influencer marketing. Do you have a different approach for that? How would you manage that?
It is very different. Can I ask what service in particular?
So for example, one of my clients is an architect.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one, because you going to the trust and authenticity piece, you're not going to take an influencer's opinion if they've never actually engaged that person before personally. So that's where I would probably say you're better off with perhaps an ambassador style approach, where you're actually utilizing a trustworthy and familiar face to endorse that person. They can create some content together, you know, perhaps it's a video series, an education piece. It's a little bit more interactive, rather than having someone just post randomly about an architect, or, you know, again, could be any service. Does that help? Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, hit me.
So with engagement, how does saves and shares come into it, or is that more reach?
That all comes back to, so again, you know, when you've completed a campaign, we'll always ask for influencers to provide screenshots of their insights. Yeah. We definitely want to measure that, but that will be indicative in your reach. So when you're looking at that reporting on that day-by-day breakdown and you see reach has skyrocketed, let's have a look at who posted on that day. Then when you do get their post data from them, and let's say they had 10 saves, well, let's connect the dots. It's interesting because, you know, obviously everyone knows that likes, although we can still see them, it's not the be all and end all. We're really looking at shares, saves, engagement. That's what matters these days. So although we do want to get the likes, we also want to know that people are actually wanting to know more. It goes beyond that. And that's where good influencers who nurture and connect with their audience are going to get you the results.
Is there any truth to the fact that a save holds the most weight on the Instagram algorithm?
I don't know where that came from, but that is fake news. Can I confirm? When that came out, Instagram have never, and they're quite transparent. I'll be really honest. They're very transparent about the algorithm. There is no secret. There are a few factors: timeliness, frequency, and engagement. It purely picks what you like. So if you save something, then of course you're going to get served that person's content more so. But your post isn't deemed null and void if no one saves it. It all goes back to your behaviors. Anybody else? Sure.
So one of the things that we do is a magazine, and we have people contribute to that magazine or into the magazine, and they're not traditional influencers. Like, they might have a following of like 1,000 people or 1,500, or sometimes smaller, sometimes more. And so we'll ask them to take a photo, send it through to us, and of them reading the magazine, and we'll use that as user-generated content. The switched on ones will do a good job, and they'll like put it on their Instagram, and they'll share it and tag us, and then we'll redo it. Some people will just email it through to us, but some people send shocking photos.
Yep.
And more often than not, they're shocking.
Like not usable at all. Yeah. Yeah.
And I did want to put together like a guide that was like, this is how to take a good photo, and just so they've got something to follow. But is there a way to get?
Yeah. Look.
What do you do?
This is the thing, and I think anyone who's in marketing, we go, oh, this is easy. Like, we do it every single day. Some people don't understand. And just because we, again, I say subjective, just because we think a photo looks good, they might think it looks amazing. So there's no harm in doing that. I would see there'd be huge value in putting together like a bit of a timeline. So the edition's going to come out on this date. This is, you post a story on this date, or post on your feed on this date. We're going to provide you with XYZ assets. Then if you can have a photo on this date, here's a guideline. Send them a mood board, send them on how to, tips like lighting, angles, all the basic stuff that we think is basic, all that kind of stuff. And then what to post after. And then I would also I don't know, can you take it one step further? Can you do like some content again together, talking about and promoting the magazine a little bit more? Because you do get some good people. I read it. you do get some good people. And I know, like, again, it's particularly in the real estate industry, some of them have no idea how to use social media. It's painful, but then you do have the good ones that really know how to make the most out of it, but they're few and far between.
Okay, cool.
Anyone else?
What if you don't know who would be the right influencer for your business or your service?
This is where I say take as much time spending sourcing as much as possible. So think about as a starting point, I'll ask you, are you an e-commerce, are you product based?
I'm offering workshops for people of all ages.
Yep.
Basically 10 years and onwards.
So we're local.
Yeah, local.
Yep.
And it's about around textile activities and skills, teaching and experience.
Amazing.
Sort of thing. I'm a new business and I've got just hardly 180 people on Instagram following me for 6 months. So, and I'm thinking how to go beyond that.
So a great place to start, and I call it piggybacking. TAFE SA, they obviously have a really good fashion program there. Have a look and start to think of people who are in the fashion industry or textiles in Adelaide, then start to look at who they engage with, look at who they're following, just start commenting and liking. Just start to actually create some conversations with these people who may have some kind of weight in the industry locally. And that will start to make it a little bit easier for you when perhaps you do find someone who you go, you know what, they fit my business, they actually might be a good fit for a partnership. It's a little bit easier to go in rather than just going randomly straight for the jugular. And there's also, we are lucky here to a degree, we do have some good fashion designers as well. We've got some good couture. I would really just start engaging with as much of those as possible because people are going to see your name popping up.
So it'd be more like that I start interacting with those people on Insta or Facebook,
Yeah.
wherever.
Yeah. And see who starts to kind of bite a little bit. And then what you'll find from there is you'll also see your following might change. So you might start to get some interesting people following you, and then you go, okay, cool, this person's noticed me. Again, go on their profile. Are they a good fit? Or have a look at similar profiles as well. Again, because I ramble, does everyone know how to find similar profiles on Instagram? If you learn one thing. So if you go on to, again, I'm just going to use, I'll just use Sarah Jane as an example. Lovely Adelaide girl, if anyone ever needs one. So if you press that arrow there, Instagram will give you similar profiles based on who they interact with.
Sorry, where did you get it from?
So you go on their page and there's that arrow. And then on your phone, it's also there as well. And then you can scroll through and have a bit of a look. The other thing you can also do, particularly with your industry, I'd even have a look at some hashtags.
That's exhausting.
I know.
You have to put them down every single time. And if you want to edit your post, you would have to put down the 10 hashtags.
Hashtags, we love them, but we hate them. They work. I got to say they work, but it is exhausting, and you also have the limitations geographically. That's where I say looking at geolocations is probably a bit easier rather than hashtags. But, if you have a look at like, even hashtag, I choose SA or SA made and things like that, you start to see the kind of people that are engaged in that kind of thing. Anyone else?
Outside of Instagram, like YouTube, LinkedIn, influencer marketing, just kind of a general question around how useful you find that. Like, you probably heard of Raka, the local.
Yes.
And I loved how they integrated their products into their videos.
Yeah.
Rather than having it at the beginning like the normal YouTube sponsored ad.
Yeah. They're clever boys. Tell you what, when they're not smashing things, they make some pretty cool videos. YouTube is a great one. Look, the reality is that YouTube is such a niche. It's very, very likely that the audience on Instagram is not the audience on YouTube. So when it comes to YouTube, it's just making sure you've actually got the substance to fill, because the reality is people want long form content on YouTube. They're prepared to buckle up and watch a 30, 40-minute video. If they wanted quick stuff, they're either going to watch a reel on Instagram or they're going to be on TikTok. So, you've got to make sure that you've actually got the substance for that. But in saying that, if you're in a service-based industry, this is where, where I mentioned before about partnering with someone who has some credentials. A video series on YouTube would be fantastic. Vlog content goes really well on YouTube as well. So just, again, having that depth, that obviously if you're in a professional space, that goes really well on LinkedIn. Just bear in mind that LinkedIn, much like Facebook, it doesn't like YouTube links. It likes native video content. So you're better off posting a snippet, so chopping it up and then directing people to a landing page or something like that if need be. But yeah, YouTube is a really good one if you've got the substance. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one, which I'm not sure how relevant it is for you, but one topic that we keep getting, business video storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding a lot of clients are coming to us because they're trying a commodity style video. It's not quite working for them. So they want more story-based stuff. But they want to know from us, what are the metrics, what are the data that we've got from our existing clients. Now trying to get that off existing clients, you just never have
Agency life.
Agency life, yeah. Have you got any tips on how to...
Yeah, look, it's a challenging one because you're right. What works for someone isn't going to necessarily work for someone else. And again, it all comes down to how they're actually managing their platform. So let's say, that they are managing it in-house and it's incredibly neglected. They don't do any community management. What, they're going to expect to post a video and all of a sudden everything's going to skyrocket? It just doesn't work like that. It takes time. And, the thing is with content as well, you can't just, again, post one really cool video and think, my work is done. I'm just going to watch the likes and say, as a roll in. Like it's not real life. So the best way I would explain it to people is that marketing, nothing works in isolation. We can prepare this video and this is how we think it will work best in your social media strategy and in amongst your social media, but you need to be consistent and you actually need to be doing your end of the deal by nurturing your audience in order to actually see the results. I'd say that's probably the best way because I know, look, I get it all the time as well. They go, oh, I just want a video. I don't know why, I just want a video. Okay. Don't know what we're going to do with it. Anyone else?
When you are briefing an influencer and you're asking them for content that goes outside of, say, their main platform being Instagram or wherever, how do you word it to request from them that you can use their content elsewhere? Like, is that something that you run into regularly?
We're recording, so I shouldn't say. I'm naughty. My general rule of thumb, and again, it's just from experience, once something's on social media, it's out there. It's a free-for-all. As long as you're crediting, I'm very passionate about that, always credit, because again, we know it takes time. But if they've posted something on their Instagram, I'm going to save that and I'm going to use that on other platforms. It's just the nature of the beast, unless they often, they might say to you limited usage. If you work with agencies, talent management agencies, particularly on the East Coast, they will say in their paperwork that it's only to be used for X period of time and it can't be used for paid advertising or whatever. If I see that, I will just flag and say, hey, look, we were thinking of using this. Is that okay? And generally, if you're paying, they'll say, cool, no worries. But what does it ask for? Ask for forgiveness, not for permission. Anyone else?
Do you ever create kind of an agreement plan or some kind of contract? Because what I've had experiences in the past with a few influencers is that they've, on the day that they're meant to post, they're like, oh, I've just had a really busy day, even though we agreed on that. I've had an influencer say the package never arrived. Then I've got Australia Post saying no, they actually often. What kind of, do do you have any systems or agreement plans in place to kind of avoid those kind of things?
Yeah, when there's money involved, absolutely.
Yeah.
When there's money involved, we'll always do at least a one pager that can state usage, dates. If timing is critical and we are locked in for a date, you've got to meet that. We'll always have to have a one pager that has all of those details in that they have to sign off on. And then particularly with long-term partnerships. So like we said, you know, your solo as an example, your package of 6 stories and 4 posts, we'll put all of that in writing, that we're contracted for 90 days, particularly with that one. They weren't to work with other activewear brands during that time as well. So we make it very clear if there's any limitations around what they can and can't do, they sign off on that. And then again, if you're going on a long-term program, so the athlete program at Riderwear, we had contracts with everyone. They were contracted for 12 months. And it was very explicit what they could and couldn't do. You get some pushback, but most of the time they don't even read it. It's actually concerning how many people will sign things without reading them, but you know, it's not a legally binding document. But it will protect you if for whatever reason you need to get something done. Any other questions?
Hashtags. What's the sweet spot? I used to use Plan, and then Instagram just changed the whole way that worked. And they used to tell you like the ideal.
Yeah.
Does that matter how many people follow it? Or
so the trick with hashtags is not to use really, really generic ones, because the chances of you getting any traction are slim to none. You've got to be almost specific enough that someone's going to click on it, but then not too specific that you limit your reach. So what we our approach is always think of what is someone going to search to find your stuff. So it could be quite broad. So for example, you know, we do Alexis George bridal. We actually started using the hashtag Melbourne wedding, Melbourne photographer, Sydney bride. All of a sudden our reach skyrocketed. Now he can actually accommodate for Sydney and Melbourne brides, but you know, just by thinking a little bit outside the square, you can make some big differences. Don't feel like you have to use 30 just because you can. Keep them really relevant and make them more relevant to your profile as a whole, not necessarily the specific post. Because what happens is if you just do specific post hashtags and then someone goes in your profile and they go, well, this is very disconnected, it's not ideal. So best to keep it consistent. Any other questions?
That might be it. That was really good. So if everyone put their hands together.
Oh, you don't have to.
So yeah, thank you again for tonight. I would like to thank everyone who came in person and the people who are online. I'm trying to stand close enough to Natalie, but the mic will pick it up for everyone who's looking on there. If you want to stay tuned to our social media for our various events that have been coming up and our next lot of seminars, we'll have more information about them coming out. If everyone who's in person wants to hang around, have a drink, have some nibbles and do some networking, that would be great as well. So thank you all for coming.